I've talked about this topic before, but the questions come up, and it's how can social topics like police shooting or climate change or these kinds of things, social unrest, white privilege, these topics, how can they be inserted to comics? And you have a split audience. You have some people who really would like to see these topics addressed, and I suspect are not too heavy into comics because they're not getting that out of comics. We'll get to more of that after the jump. But and then I think you have another group who really does not want to see that in comics at all. What do you do? If you're a publisher, how are you supposed to navigate this, and what are the answers for it? Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm taking a slightly different view on this than in the past. There's a ton of videos by a lot of people who talk about getting these topics out of comics and social issues and things like social injustice and all that stuff do not belong in comics, and it's driving away the audience. And I want to attack this from a different perspective. Let's assume for one moment that there is an audience of people who want to see these topics addressed in comics. They are interested in reading it and seeing it. These people show up in my comments. I see them showing up in other videos' comments. These people are out there. That said, these people are likely not buying a lot of the current mainstream comics, and I don't say it as a slight to those people. I'm saying it as something that is sort of common sense. If you want to see social topics addressed in comics, why in the world are you going to buy the Avengers, for example, that is either not dealing with those social topics or dealing with them only in a very kind of flippant and casual way? That's not going to be what you're looking for. So, here's a premise to think about. And before people come in, and again in the comments, hopefully you've lasted this long into the video. A lot of people, I think, see the title and they just start commenting. They don't actually watch the video. But uh, here's a premise I have. I think a lot of mainstream comics are not committing to the bit, in the sense that they want to come out and they want to talk about how they're addressing social topics. Maybe they have, they throw out some pronouns for some, NPC in the comic, but they don't actually. There's not anything core to a story. There's not anything built around these characters. It's just kind of rolled out, fairly casually, and then not really addressed. And when they do that, my feeling is then nobody is happy. The audience that wants those types of topics brought up are not getting what they want. They're getting just kind of very surface level things. Maybe that makes some people happy, but I tend to not think so. And the people who are really adverse to that kind of stuff, who do not want to see pronouns or other social topics showing up in, Moon Knight, they're turned off by this. I think that in many cases, the big publishers are picking the worst of both options. I think that, it remains to be seen. A lot of people have made comments and made videos and made a lot of commentary on the idea that the social justice audience isn't out there. And my argument is we don't really know. Are they out there? Are they not out there? We're not sure. The funny thing about comics is the audience today is so low. I mean, when you're talking about a Marvel comic selling like 20,000, 30,000 copies, that's really too small of an audience, period. And so the idea that you could have 20 to 30,000 people who are, super into social justice topics pick up that comic. I mean, yeah, sure, that's reasonable to assume. It's too tiny, but the problem is that's the wrong question. The right question is, how do we get these comics selling 100,000, 200, 300,000 copies and continuing to climb? That's the right question. And if the answer was, well, you need to tap into a social justice crowd that represents a target audience of 7 million people that you can market to, okay, then go for it, try it out, see if that works. But if you're going to do that, you can't like just flirt with the idea. You've got to actually have this stuff rolled out. And I think that's another case where trying to insert this into current comics with like 50 years of continuity, it doesn't fit. I've done videos about this in the past of like, if you're going to tackle, say, climate change in a comic, it just doesn't make any sense to tackle it in any kind of meaningful way in, say, like the Fantastic Four, where Mr. Fantastic can solve this problem. I mean, because what happens is in the Fantastic Four comic, they'll talk about like climate change deniers, but it's absurd when you've got like Doctor Doom and Reed Richards and others. You've got all these super scientists who build portals into other dimensions and other things, and it's like, you're telling me you can't, whip up a open source clean energy system that you're telling me you can't do that? Doctor Doom recently had a storyline sort of addressing this, and it was, there's some entertainment like, hey, here's a clean energy source, but it turns out it wasn't quite right, and it blew up, it caused, imminent destruction of the planet. But, you know, uh, again, you've got superheroes that can invent anything, and you have them stumped by clean energy sources. That doesn't make any sense. In fact, the comic itself, there was a one of the Dan Slott comic books recently had Mr. Fantastic talking about how he's being this rocket ship with clean fuel and all these cool parts to make it not just a cool, super fast, sexy spaceship, but also clean energy and revolutionary. Okay, cool. So did Reed Richards share this technology with India and China? Did he share this with the U.S.? Like, did what happened next? When I think 8 or 9 issues later, post Empire, Reed is talking about climate change deniers. It's like, dude, you're inventing technology and it's not spreading around the planet. You're the idiot, Reed Richards. I mean, it just, this stuff breaks down. It's like, the idea of economic inequality. It's like, yeah, okay, except can't the superheroes, like, if the superheroes could tackle this if they wanted to in a lot of ways. That's why I think inserting these topics into current Marvel and DC comics, it doesn't play well. It doesn't fit because the superheroes invariably have to be dumb. So if you're going to kind of create these topics in comics in a real meaningful way, I think you have to create new comics. You have to create new characters, new universes. I think you have to do new things. I don't think it works in the old universe. I don't know. I'm willing to be proved wrong. Again, I'm trying to navigate this interesting dilemma that we get where it feels like a chicken and the eggs problem, where nobody is getting what they want. And it's like, okay, we're going to take these existing comics. It doesn't really make sense for these topics to be applied to these comics, but screw it, we're going to do it anyway. But we can't really do it in a meaningful way. So what we're going to do is kind of passively aggressively, like, insert little comments in, like, the Fantastic Four will be on another planet, and they'll give a brief, like, one panel speech on misgendering, and it's like, does that doesn't really do anything. Like, I don't imagine anyone who's terribly into these topics is reading this going, finally, representation. I did, are you? I don't think so. I think more likely you're turning to independent graphic novels and you're turning to works outside of the big two that are just tackling these topics head on and doing so in a meaningful, complete way. And so it's a lost cause. So again, all you're doing if you're Marvel or DC is you're irritating one side and then not giving the other side what they want. And so the sales don't really show up in either direction. And then we're all kind of supposed to be confused as to why, progress isn't getting made and we're not seeing these topics show up in comics. But who's confused, really? That's the flaw in the plan. I'm willing to bet that there are people who are into social topics and into all these things that are looking for comics for them. And the problem is nobody's, they're at the mainstream level, at least, nobody's really making comics for them. Look at kind of the way that people have embraced Saga. And Saga tackles a bunch of these kind of social and economic topics in its pages, but it's a brand new universe. It doesn't have anything holding it back. It doesn't have any existing continuity. And this is part of the reason, by the way, why I think people say, yeah, we shouldn't cling to the past. We should just move forward. That sounds good and is something you can accomplish with new characters. But when you're talking about the Hulk or the Avengers or the X-Men or Batman or Superman or any of these titles, you can't just pretend the last 50 years are gone. I mean, you could cancel everything and you could relaunch and you could do it just the way you want to and just say everything that's inconvenient to our story, ignore. But you absolutely are going to detach your old audience, and I don't think you're going to get your new audience, at least not fully, because that new audience is not going to come along with the on the ride with you of just saying, all right, I'll just pretend nothing else before matters. Even somebody who doesn't like a particular topic is not able to just disconnect and detach from it. I, it'd be like if on a TV show you had, I don't know, you had The Simpsons, for example, and then you said The Simpsons is going to reboot and relaunch, and it's going to change, and it's going to tackle more contemporary topics, and we're going to, age up some of the characters, and that's what we're going to do. The it's unclear if a bunch of new fans would come along for the ride. It is clear that some of the old fans would feel like you've abandoned the premise they were signed up for and they wouldn't continue. And these new fans are still going to look at this property and they're going to remember what's been marketed for the last 30 years of The Simpsons. So it wouldn't work. You're going to have to do something new. The question then becomes, why don't people just do new things? Why the reluctance to just do new properties? And the answer is simple. It's doing something new is riskier for a creator, for a writer, for whoever it happens to be, than leveraging an existing IP. The existing IP already has a built-in fan base. It already has a bunch of built-in sales, and people want to be able to tap into that. They want to be able to, use that audience. The challenge is, you can't say, hey, I want all the strengths and the benefits of, say, using Spider-Man with its built-in audience, built-in revenue stream, and built-in people, but I want to completely change everything about Spider-Man and doing it my own way. That is, kind of the very definition of having your cake and eating it too. You can't come in and say, I'm going to just completely erase everything that came before, but I still want the advantages of having existing IP. That's just ludicrous. But a lot of people do seem to think that's how it should work. But it doesn't. The sales prove over and over it doesn't work that way. Anyway, I've talked my way around this a bunch. What do you think? Again, for some of you who are listening right now, you're going, there's no way anyone wants to read these social justice type topics. There's no way, forget it. And my counter to you is, I think there is an audience for it. I think that the way it's being served is completely pointless right now, for all intents and purposes, pointless. There are definitely some people who like the current comics and like the kind of half nods to some of these topics and wish they would do more. I have my doubts that those people are super, super satisfied with what they're getting. Maybe the straddling the line works, but I have my doubts. And I mainly say that because you see comments from people kind of wishing that the comics would do more. And they're sticking around, but the comics aren't doing more. They're stuck in the middle. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts below into all this. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Just trying to bring up a topic, different way of thinking about it. Hope it did that for you at least. Most importantly, thanks for listening.